never thought I'd see the day when my own son would tell me to leave his house while I was still recovering from major surgery. The bandages were barely changed, the stitches still fresh. But life has a way of revealing people's true colors, when you least expect it. What my son didn't realize when he watched me struggle down his driveway with my small suitcase was that I held the keys to something he desperately needed: the building where his precious business operated. Sometimes the universe has a way of balancing the scales of justice, and my story is proof of that. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I always believed that family meant everything. At 65, I'd spent the better part of my life making sure my son had opportunities I never had. My name is Margaret Wilson, though everyone calls me Maggie, and I've lived in Burlington, Vermont my entire life. I grew up the daughter of a factory worker, married young to Richard, my high school sweetheart, and had our son Jason by the time I was 22. Richard and I divorced when Jason was just 14. Like many marriages, ours crumbled under the weight of different dreams and constant financial strain. Richard wanted the fast life in a big city, while I wanted stability for our son. The separation wasn't easy, but I was determined to give Jason everything he needed to succeed, even if it meant working 2 jobs and sacrificing my own dreams. My nursing career at Burlington General Hospital wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me enough satisfaction to keep going. Every extra penny went straight into Jason's college fund. I'd skip lunches, buy clothes from thrift shops, and avoid vacations for years. The walls of our small 2-bedroom apartment were thin, but they held all the love I had to give. "Mom, why don't you ever do anything for yourself?" Jason asked me once during his senior year of high school. He was filling out college applications, his future bright with possibilities that I had mortgaged my present to provide. "Seeing you succeed is doing something for myself," I told him with a smile. It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't a lie either. Motherhood had consumed my identity so completely that I sometimes struggled to remember what Margaret, not just Jason's mom, wanted from life. When Jason got accepted to Northwestern University with a partial scholarship, I cried tears of joy and relief. The scholarship covered tuition, but not room and board or books. I didn't hesitate to take out a second mortgage on our small apartment to cover the rest. My supervisor, Nancy, questioned my decision over lunch in the hospital cafeteria. "Maggie, what about your retirement? You can't keep giving everything to Jason without thinking about yourself," she warned, stirring her coffee absently. I waved her concern away. "Jason is my retirement plan. Once he's established, I know he'll take care of me." Nancy's expression told me she wasn't convinced, but I refused to see any other possibility. Jason had always been a good boy, considerate and loving. I had no reason to doubt he'd be there for me when I needed him. Jason thrived in college, majoring in business and meeting his future wife, Amanda, during sophomore year. Amanda came from the kind of money I could only dream of. Her father owned several car dealerships across the Midwest. When Jason brought her home to Burlington for the first time, I couldn't help but notice how her eyes darted around our modest apartment, cataloging everything we lacked. "It's cozy," she said with a tight smile, and I felt a familiar pang of shame about our circumstances. After graduation, Jason and Amanda married in a lavish ceremony that her parents paid for. I wore a dress I'd saved 3 months to buy and sat alone at the family table, painfully aware of how I didn't quite fit into this new chapter of my son's life. When they announced they were moving to Boston, where Jason had landed a job with a prestigious marketing firm, I felt my world shift beneath my feet. "You should come with us, Mom," Jason said, but his tone lacked conviction, and Amanda's expression made it clear this was not a welcome suggestion. "No, honey. My life is here," I replied, though truthfully, my life was wherever Jason was. But I understood the unspoken boundary. Young couples needed space to grow. Over the next few years, I watched from a distance as Jason climbed the corporate ladder. Our phone calls became less frequent, his visits to Burlington rare and brief. When he called to tell me he was starting his own marketing agency, I felt a surge of pride. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. How are you financing it?" I asked, genuinely curious and concerned. "We've got investors lined up," he said vaguely. "But rental costs in downtown Boston are killing us. We need about $50,000 more for the security deposit on this perfect office space." My heart raced. This was my moment, my chance to be essential to my son again. Without hesitation, I said, "I can. Help with that, Jason." "Really?" The surprise in his voice stung a little. Had he forgotten all I'd sacrificed for his success? The next day, I visited my financial advisor, Walter Green, who had helped me manage the modest inheritance I'd received when my Aunt Patricia passed away 5 years earlier. I'd been cautiously investing it, watching it grow slowly but steadily. "Maggie, using this money for Jason's business venture is risky," Walter warned, his bushy eyebrows furrowing with concern. "You'd be better off keeping it as your safety net." "Family isn't a risk, Walter," I replied firmly. "Besides, I'm not getting any younger. What good is a safety net if my son needs help now?" Walter sighed but nodded. "If you're determined to do this, let me suggest something. Instead of just giving him the money, why not purchase the building where his business will operate? It's an investment for you, and it helps Jason. It's the best of both worlds." The idea was brilliant. After researching properties in Boston, I found a small commercial building near where Jason wanted to establish his business. It needed work but had good bones and was in an up-and-coming neighborhood. Using my entire inheritance plus a small loan, I purchased the building outright. When I called Jason with the news, he was ecstatic. "Mom, this is incredible. You bought the whole building?" His voice crackled with excitement over the phone. "Yes, and the first floor is yours. Rent-free for 2 years to help you get established," I explained, feeling useful and connected to my son again. "You're amazing," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "Can we keep this between us, though? Amanda thinks we secured traditional investors and well, you know how she feels about family help." I agreed, though the request left me feeling slightly hollow. The property management company I hired would handle the day-to-day operations, keeping my involvement at arm's length as Jason requested. My name was on the deed, but as far as Amanda knew, Jason's company simply had a generous landlord. Life continued this way for several years. Jason's business, Apex Marketing Solutions, flourished in Boston. I remained in Burlington, working at the hospital until increasing joint pain made the long shifts impossible. I retired at 63, living modestly on my pension and the small rental income from the upper floors of the Boston building. I never mentioned the arrangement to anyone besides Walter, honoring Jason's request for discretion. When the pain in my knees became unbearable, my doctor recommended double knee replacement, surgery. It was a major procedure that would require weeks of recovery and physical therapy afterward. I called Jason with the news, hoping he might offer to help during my recovery. "That's rough timing, Mom," he said, sounding distracted. "We're in the middle of our biggest campaign yet, and Amanda's redecorating the house." "I understand," I said, swallowing my disappointment. "I just wanted you to know." After a pause, he added, "Why don't you come stay with us after the surgery? You shouldn't be alone, and we have that guest room on the first floor." The offer surprised and delighted me. Perhaps our relationship wasn't as distant as I'd feared. "Are you sure? What about Amanda?" "Don't worry about Amanda," he said confidently. "Family comes first." Those words warmed my heart as I prepared for surgery, packing a small suitcase, with everything I'd need for a few weeks in Boston. As the anesthesia took hold in the operating room, my last thought was of Jason, and how grateful I was that when I really needed him, my son would be there for me after all. Little did I know, that my arrival at his doorstep would set in motion a chain of events that would change everything between us forever. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The surgery went as well as could be expected. I spent 3 days in the hospital, drifting, in and out of consciousness while nurses monitored my vitals and adjusted my pain medication. I had expected Jason to visit, but he only called once, briefly explaining that a major client emergency had come up. I told myself not to be disappointed. He was a busy businessman after all, and he'd make it up to me once I was staying at his house. When discharge day arrived, I was surprised to see not Jason, but a car service driver holding a sign with my name on it. "Mrs. Wilson?" he asked when I was wheeled to the hospital entrance. "Your son arranged for transportation to his residence." A text message from Jason explained, "Sorry I couldn't pick you up, Mom. Client crisis. Driver will bring you to the house. Amanda should be there." The 2-hour drive from Burlington to Boston was uncomfortable despite the luxury car. Every bump in the road sent shockwaves of pain through my newly reconstructed knees, and the pain medication made me nauseous. By the time we pulled into the circular driveway of Jason and Amanda's sprawling colonial in Brookline, I was exhausted and fighting back tears. The driver helped me to the front door where I rang the bell, leaning heavily on my walker. After what seemed like an eternity, Amanda opened the door. Her plastered-on smile didn't reach her eyes. "Margaret," she said, making no move to help me. "We weren't expecting you until tomorrow." I blinked in confusion. Jason arranged for me to come today. "The hospital discharged me this morning?" She sighed dramatically and glanced back into the house. "Well, the cleaner hasn't prepared the guest room yet. Jason didn't tell me about the change of plans." "I'm sorry for the confusion," I said, struggling to remain upright. "But I really need to lie down soon." Amanda reluctantly stepped aside to let me enter. The house was immaculate, all gleaming hardwood and designer furniture that looked more for show than comfort. She led me through the living room where I noticed vacuum lines on the carpet and fresh flowers on the coffee table. Clearly, someone had cleaned recently. "You can rest on the couch until the room is ready," she said, gesturing vaguely before disappearing toward the back of the house. I carefully lowered myself onto the stiff sectional sofa, elevating my legs as the surgeon had instructed. From this position, I could see through to the gourmet kitchen where Amanda was talking quietly but intensely on her phone, shooting occasional glances in my direction. An hour passed. Then 2. Amanda moved around the house, deliberately avoiding the living room. No offer of water, medication, or food. My pain was intensifying, but my pills were packed in my suitcase, which the driver had left by the front door, too far for me to reach without assistance. Finally, I called out, "Amanda, could you please bring me my medication? It's in my bag." She appeared in the doorway, annoyance evident on her face. "Jason should have warned us you'd need so much attention. I have a charity luncheon tomorrow that I've been planning for months." Nevertheless, she retrieved my bag, placing it just within my reach before walking away again. I struggled to open the child-proof cap with my trembling hands, swallowing the pills dry. It was nearly 7 p.m. when Jason finally came home. I was dozing on the couch, uncomfortable and hungry, when I heard the garage door open. "Hey, sorry I'm late," he called out to Amanda before noticing me. "Mom, you're here already?" "She showed up this morning," Amanda replied before I could speak. "Your message said tomorrow." Jason ran a hand through his hair, looking flustered. "Right, yeah. There was a miscommunication with the hospital." He turned to me with a strained smile. "How are you feeling?" "I've been better," I admitted. "Is the guest room ready? I really need to lie down properly." An awkward glance passed between Jason and Amanda. "About that," Jason began, clearing his throat. "We've been thinking it might be better if you stayed somewhere else for your recovery." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" It's just that we're not really equipped to handle post-surgical care, he continued hurriedly. Amanda has her social obligations and I'm swamped with work. The campaign I mentioned, we just landed the Taylor account. It's huge, Mom. Career-defining. I see, I said quietly, though I didn't see it all. Do you have somewhere in mind? There's a great assisted living facility in Brookline, Amanda interjected brightly. Very upscale. They have short-term recovery suites. At $500 a day, I pointed out, doing the quick math in my head. My limited retirement savings couldn't sustain that kind of expense. We'd help with that, of course, Jason said, though his tone lacked conviction. A heavy silence filled the room. Through the haze of pain medication, a realization dawned on me. I wasn't welcome here. Not really. The guest room excuse was just that, an excuse. I think I'd prefer to go back to my apartment, I said finally, mustering what dignity I could. I can arrange for home health care. Relief washed over both their faces so clearly it was almost comical. If you're sure, Mom, Jason said. I think that's the best solution for everyone. Everyone meaning them, I thought bitterly. I'll call the car service to take you back tomorrow, he added, as if he were doing me a favor. I spent an uncomfortable night on their couch, drifting in and out of sleep, trying to ignore the whispered argument coming from upstairs. The next morning, Jason was gone before I woke up. Another emergency at the office. Amanda made it clear that the driver would arrive at noon. I have to run to my luncheon, she explained, slipping on expensive heels. Will you be okay until the car comes? I've managed this long, I replied, not bothering to hide my disappointment. She paused at the door, perhaps feeling a twinge of guilt. It's not that we don't want to help Margaret. It's just that Jason's at a critical point in his career. This Taylor account could make Apex the top marketing firm in New England. And nothing should interfere with that, I finished for her. Not even his mother's health. Her lips thinned. You chose to have the surgery now. You could have waited until after the campaign. I didn't bother explaining that my orthopedist had warned against further delay, or that I'd been in excruciating pain for months. It wouldn't have mattered to her. After she left, I sat alone in their perfect house, feeling more isolated than I had in years. The walker beside me, my hastily repacked suitcase at my feet, I looked like what I was, an unwanted guest being evicted before outstaying her welcome. My phone buzzed with a text from Walter, my financial advisor. Hope recovery is going well. Just FYI, the Boston Property Management Company called. Issue with the heating system in your building. Nothing urgent, but wanted you to know. My building. The one housing my son's precious business. The one he didn't know I owned. For the first time since arriving at Jason's house, I smiled. When the car arrived, the driver was kind enough to help me into the back seat, storing my walker and suitcase in the trunk. As we pulled away from the curb, I made a decision. Change of plans, I told him. Instead of Burlington, can you take me to the Brookline Suites Hotel? The driver nodded, adjusting his route. I wasn't going home. Not yet. First, I needed to see this building of mine that housed my son's career-defining business. I needed to understand exactly what Jason valued more than his own mother's well-being. As we drove through Boston's congested streets, my phone buzzed again. A text from Jason. Driver says you're going to a hotel instead of home. What's going on? I didn't respond. For once, he could wonder what I was doing and why. For once, he could be the one left in the dark. The Brookline Suites Hotel wasn't the Ritz, but it offered what I needed most. A clean, comfortable bed and staff who didn't look at me like I was an inconvenience. The young woman at the front desk noticed my walker and immediately upgraded me to an accessible room without my having to ask. We also have a courtesy medical shuttle if you need transportation to appointments, she informed me as she handed over my keycard. And room service runs until midnight. I thanked her, oddly touched by this stranger's consideration when my own family had shown so little. Once settled in my room, I took my pain medication and called Nancy, my former supervisor from the hospital, who had retired a year before me. Maggie? Her voice was warm with surprise. Shouldn't you be recovering at Jason's? That was the plan, I replied, trying to keep bitterness from my tone. Things changed. After explaining what had happened, Nancy's outrage was palpable even through the phone. That ungrateful little, after everything you've done for him. I keep telling myself there must be more to it, I said, though I was struggling to find excuses for them. This Taylor account seems incredibly important. More important than his mother who just had double knee replacement? Nancy scoffed. Nothing is that important. After promising to call me daily to check in, Nancy ended the call. I lay back against the pillows, exhausted, but mind racing. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Jason and a text that read, "Mom, please call me. I'm worried. Where are you staying?" I sent a brief reply. "At a hotel. I'm fine." Then I switched my phone to silent and closed my eyes. The next morning, I contacted the property management company that handled my Boston building. The manager, Trevor Simmons, sounded surprised to hear directly from me. "Mrs. Wilson, what can I do for you? I was handling the heating issue as we discussed last month. Actually, I'm in Boston and thought I might visit the property," I explained. "Would that be possible today?" "Of course," Trevor replied. "Would you like me to give you a tour? We've made several improvements since your last visit 2 years ago." I arranged to meet him at 2 p.m., giving myself time for a room service breakfast and a painful but necessary session of the physical therapy exercises my surgeon had prescribed. By the time I eased myself into a taxi, my knees were throbbing despite the medication, but I was determined to see this through. The building was located in a trendy area of downtown Boston that had been undergoing revitalization when I purchased it. Now, the street was lined with upscale boutiques, coffee shops, and professional offices. My modest 4-story brick building stood in the middle of the block, its facade freshly painted, with large windows displaying the Apex Marketing Solutions logo on the ground floor. Trevor met me at the entrance, his expression shifting to concern when he saw my walker. "Mrs. Wilson, I had no idea you were recovering from surgery. We could have done this another time." "I'm already here," I said firmly. "And I'd like to see everything, especially the first floor." Trevor hesitated. "Apex is in the middle of some big project. They've been working around the clock." "I won't disturb them," I promised. "I just want to see the space." Reluctantly, Trevor led me through the building, starting with the upper floors where a law firm and a tech startup were my tenants. Both spaces were modern and well-maintained, with employees who nodded politely as we passed. Trevor pointed out various improvements: new energy-efficient windows, updated HVAC systems, renovated common areas. "Your investment has appreciated significantly," he noted as we rode the elevator back down. "We've had several inquiries about purchasing the building. The location has become prime real estate." I nodded, filing away that information for later. "And the heating issue you mentioned?" "Minor. Problem with the boiler. Parts are ordered and scheduled for replacement next week." He hesitated as the elevator stopped at the ground floor. "Mrs. Wilson, about Apex." "Yes?" "They've been demanding tenants lately. Since they signed that big new client, they've requested several after-hours maintenance calls, complained about the other businesses, even tried to reserve all the visitor parking spots for their clients." That didn't sound like the son I raised. "Have they paid their rent on time?" "Yes, always. That's not the issue. It's more their attitude." Trevor looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Wilson seems to think his business takes priority over everything else in the building." I smiled thinly. "I'd like to see their office now." The Apex Marketing Solutions office occupied the entire ground floor, a space I'd last seen when it was empty and in need of renovation. Now it was transformed into a sleek, modern workspace with glass-walled conference rooms, an open design with clusters of desks and stylish lounge areas for client meetings. The company logo, a stylized mountain peak in blue and silver, dominated the reception area. The receptionist looked up as we entered, her professional smile faltering when she saw my walker. "Can I help you?" "This is Mrs. Wilson," Trevor explained. "The building owner. She's here for a routine inspection." The young woman's eyes widened. "Oh, I wasn't aware. Mr. Wilson isn't here right now." "That's fine," I assured her. "We won't disturb anyone's work, just a quick walkthrough." She made a hurried phone call while Trevor showed me around the common areas. The space was impressive, clearly, designed to wow clients with its contemporary aesthetics and air of success. About halfway through our tour, a harried-looking woman in her 30s approached us. "Hello, I'm Vanessa Miller, Operations Director for Apex," she said, extending her hand. "Can I help you with something? We're in the middle of a major campaign launch, and this isn't a great time for interruptions." "Vanessa," Trevor began. "This is Margaret Wilson," I interrupted, shaking her hand. "The building owner, just checking on my investment." Vanessa's demeanor changed instantly. "Mrs. Wilson, I'm so sorry for the confusion. We weren't expecting you. If we'd known the owner was visiting today..." "That's exactly why I didn't announce." "Myself," I replied with a smile. "I wanted to see how things really operate." She laughed nervously. "Well, as you can see, we're extremely busy with the Taylor campaign. It's our biggest client yet." "So I've heard," I murmured. "Is Jason around? Jason Wilson?" A flicker of surprise crossed her face. "You know Mr. Wilson?" "You could say that," I replied, enjoying her confusion. "Is he here?" "He's at a client meeting off-site," Vanessa explained. "But I'm sure he'd want to know you stopped by. Can I tell him what this is regarding?" I considered my options. I could reveal myself as Jason's mother and watch the shock on her face, but something held me back. If Jason had never mentioned I owned the building, there must be a reason. And after the way he and Amanda had treated me, I wasn't inclined to make things easy for him. "Just tell him the owner came by to discuss lease terms," I said finally. "He'll want to call me." Vanessa nodded, still looking uncertain. "Of course, I'll give him the message right away." As Trevor and I left Apex's office, I caught sight of a large poster board in one of the conference rooms. A mock-up of what appeared to be an ambitious marketing campaign for Taylor luxury homes, featuring glossy images of multi-million-dollar properties and the slogan, "Where Legacy Lives." "The famous Taylor account," I murmured. "Apparently it's huge," Trevor confirmed. "From what I understand, if they nail this campaign, Apex will become the agency of record for the entire Taylor Corporation. We're talking millions in billings annually." Outside the building, I thanked Trevor for the tour and settled onto a bench to wait for my taxi. The pain in my knees had intensified, but my mind was clearer than it had been in days. Pieces were falling into place. Jason's obsession with this client, his dismissal of my needs, his secrecy about the building ownership. My phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Mom, please call me. I spoke with the hotel. They said you went out. Where are we?" "You?" As my taxi arrived, I typed a response. "I'm learning some interesting things about what people value. Maybe we should talk about that." Then I added, "And about who owns the building where Apex Marketing operates." My phone rang less than 2 minutes after I sent the text. Jason's name flashed on the screen, and I let it ring several times before answering. "Mom?" His voice was tight with panic. "What are you talking about? What building?" "Hello to you too, Jason," I replied calmly, settling back against the taxi's seat. "How's your day going?" "Don't play games with me right now," he snapped, then immediately softened his tone. "I mean, I'm worried about you. You're supposed to be resting after surgery, not running around Boston." "I'm managing," I said. "The hotel staff has been very helpful. More helpful than family, as it turns out." A beat of silence followed. "Look, Mom, about yesterday. I'm sorry we couldn't accommodate you. It was bad timing with this Taylor campaign. So I gathered from my visit to your office today. Another pause, longer this time. You were at Apex? Why? Just checking on my investment, I said, enjoying the cryptic nature of our conversation. It looks like business is booming. Your operations director, Vanessa, was it? Seemed very dedicated. Mom, Jason's voice dropped to a whisper, as if he were hiding from eavesdroppers. What exactly do you mean by your investment? The taxi pulled up to the hotel entrance. I think this is a conversation we should have in person, don't you? I'm at the Brookline Suites Hotel, room 318. Why don't you come by after work? We have a lot to discuss. Before he could respond, I ended the call and turned my phone off completely. The power of controlling the narrative felt surprisingly good, after decades of deferring to Jason's needs and schedule. Back in my hotel room, I ordered lunch and called Walter, my financial advisor. He answered on the first ring. Maggie, how's the recovery going? It's been educational, I replied. Walter, I need information about the Boston property. Current market value, details of Apex's lease agreement, everything. Walter didn't miss a beat. Something wrong with the arrangement? Let's just say I'm reassessing some relationships, personal and business. Give me an hour, he promised. I'll email you everything. After taking my medication and doing another painful round of physical therapy exercises, I checked my email. Walter had delivered as promised, a comprehensive file on the property including recent market assessments, lease terms, maintenance records, and potential resale value. The numbers were eye-opening. The building I'd purchased as an investment for Jason's business had nearly tripled in value as the neighborhood gentrified. The upper floor tenants were paying premium rates, while Apex Marketing continued to occupy the prime ground floor space, rent-free under our original agreement. According to the documents, the rent-free period was scheduled to end in 3 months, a detail I'd honestly forgotten about in the chaos of my surgery planning. After that, Apex would need to either sign a formal lease at market rates or vacate the premises. Walter had included a note. Prime commercial space like this in Boston's Innovation District is going for $75–85 per square foot annually. With Apex occupying 3,000 square feet, they're essentially receiving a $225,000 to $255,000 annual subsidy from you. Thought you should know. I sat back, stunned by the figures. All these years, I'd viewed the building as a way to help Jason establish his business, a maternal act of support, not a financial calculation. But seeing the cold, hard numbers made me realize the true scale of what I'd given him, and how little appreciation he'd shown for it. At precisely 6:30 p.m., there was a sharp knock on my hotel room door. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come, and called out, "It's open." Jason entered cautiously, as if expecting a trap. His eyes widened when he saw me sitting in the armchair by the window, my legs elevated on an ottoman, surrounded by papers. "Mom," he began, closing the door behind him. "What's going on? First you refused to go home after we discussed it was best for your recovery, then you show up at my office claiming to be the building owner?" "I didn't claim anything of the sort," I corrected him. "I simply introduced myself by name to your staff. It's interesting that no one there knew who Margaret Wilson is, considering she owns the building." Jason's face paled. You actually own the building? How is that possible?" I gestured to the chair across from me. "Sit down, Jason. This might take a while." He sank into the seat, eyes darting between my face and the documents spread on the table between us. "Remember when you needed $50,000 for a security deposit on office space? And I offered to help?" I began. Walter suggested instead of just giving you the money, I should invest in a property where your business could operate. It seemed like the perfect solution. Jason stared at me, speechless. "I used my inheritance from Aunt Patricia plus a small loan to purchase the building outright," I continued. You were thrilled, as I recall, but you asked me to keep it between us because Amanda thinks we secured traditional investors. That was 5 years ago, he finally managed. You never said anything. You asked me not to, I reminded him simply, and it seemed to be working well for everyone. You got your start without the burden of rent. I had a solid investment, and the property management company handled day-to-day operations. Jason ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I recognized from his childhood. I always assumed some investment group owned the building. The property managers never mentioned you by name. At my request, I confirmed, again, honoring your wishes for discretion. He leaned forward, expression calculating. So, all this time, we've been paying rent to you? Actually, no. I slid the lease agreement across the table. The arrangement was for 2 years rent-free to help you get established. That period ended 3 years ago, but I never enforced the transition to paid tenancy. The property managers have been handling the other tenants, and that income has covered the mortgage and maintenance costs. Jason picked up the document, scanning it with growing disbelief. So, we've been essentially getting free rent for 5 years? Worth approximately $250,000 annually at current market rates, I added. Not a bad maternal subsidy, wouldn't you say? He had the grace to look uncomfortable. Mom, I had no idea the numbers were that significant. Clearly, I said dryly. Though it might explain why you've been able to afford that Colonial in Brookline and Amanda's charity luncheons while other startup agencies struggle. A flash of anger crossed his face. We've worked hard for everything we have. Apex is successful because of our talent and dedication, and because you had advantages others didn't, I pointed out. Advantages I provided, which you've conveniently forgotten. That's not fair, he protested. I've always been grateful for your support. Have you? I asked quietly. Was it gratitude that led you to send me back to Burlington the day after? My surgery? Was it appreciation that made you turn off your phone when I called for help with my medication? Jason flinched. That wasn't... We were just in a difficult position with the Taylor campaign. The famous Taylor campaign, I nodded. The one that's so important it justifies abandoning your mother when she needs you most. It's not abandonment, he insisted. It's just bad timing. This account could make Apex the leading agency in New England. Can't you understand why that matters? I understand perfectly, I replied, my voice steady despite the emotion building in my chest. What I don't understand is when my son became the kind of person who values career success over basic human decency. Jason stood abruptly, pacing the small hotel room. That's not who I am. You're making me sound heartless. Your actions speak for themselves. I gestured to my walker nearby. I'm 65 years old, recovering from major surgery, and my only child couldn't spare his guest room for a few weeks. A child who, I might add, has been receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars in silent support from me for years. Stopped pacing, his business mind clearly calculating the implications. So what happens now? Are you going to start charging us rent? Evict us? The fact that this was his first concern, not my well-being, not repairing our relationship, but the financial impact on his business, told me everything I needed to know. The rent-free period in your agreement officially ends in 3 months, I said, keeping my voice neutral. At that point, you have options. You can sign a new lease at market rates, negotiate different terms, or find new space. Market rates would cripple us right now, he admitted. We've reinvested everything in expansion and the Taylor campaign. That sounds like a business problem, not a mother problem, I replied, using one of his own phrases that he'd thrown at me years ago when I'd asked for help with a leaky roof. Jason's face flushed with recognition of his own words turned against him. For a moment, I saw a glimpse of shame in his eyes, quickly replaced by calculation. Mom, he said, his voice softening as he returned to the chair across from me. I know we handled things badly yesterday. Amanda and I were stressed and not thinking clearly. Of course you can stay with us during your recovery. The sudden reversal was so transparent it was almost insulting. And what changed between yesterday and today to make that possible? Could it be knowledge of who owns your office building? Jason's expression shifted from calculated charm to defensive indignation in an instant. That's not fair. I'm trying to make things right. Now that you know I control your business location, I pointed out. Convenient timing. He stood again, color rising in his face. Do you really think I'm that mercenary? That I only care about you because of what you can do for Apex? Your actions suggest exactly that, I replied calmly. When you thought I was just your mother, needing post-surgical care, I was an inconvenience to be discarded. Now that you know I'm your landlord, suddenly I'm welcome in your home. Jason paced the small hotel room, running his hands through his hair in frustration. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. This Taylor account is more important than family, I finished for him. You've made that abundantly clear. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, Jason? I asked, leaning forward despite the pain the movement caused in my knees. Explain to me why your mother, who has supported you financially and emotionally your entire life, wasn't worth a few weeks of inconvenience after major surgery. He had no immediate answer, his mouth opening and closing without producing sound. While you're thinking, I continued, let me ask you something else. When was the last time you called just to check on me? Not because you needed something, not because it was a holiday or birthday, but simply because you cared how I was doing? His silence was damning. I can't remember either, I said softly. That's the problem, Jason. I've spent decades making your life and success my priority, and somewhere along the way, you started to see that as your entitlement rather than my gift. Jason finally sank back into the chair, deflated. I never meant for things to get this way. Few people do, I acknowledged. But intentions don't matter as much as actions. And your actions have shown me exactly where I stand in your life. He stared at the floor for a long moment before looking up, his expression more vulnerable than I'd seen in years. What happens now? With the building? With us? I'd been asking myself the same question since discovering the truth about Jason's character. The maternal instinct to protect and forgive him battled with the wounded pride of a woman who had been taken for granted once too often. That depends on what you want, Jason. Not just for your business, but for our relationship. I want things to go back to normal, he said immediately. Normal wasn't working, I pointed out. Normal was me giving everything and you taking it all for granted. He winced. That's not how I see it. How do you see it? Jason hesitated, clearly choosing his words carefully. I see a successful son building on the foundation his mother provided. Isn't that what parents want? For their children to succeed? Success isn't just measured in business achievements and bank accounts, I replied. It's also about the kind of person you become in the process. The Jason I raised would never have turned away someone who needed him, especially not his own mother. People change, Mom, he said, a defensive edge creeping back into his voice. They grow up, build their own lives. You can't expect me to drop everything whenever you need something. Surgery isn't something, Jason. It's a major life event. And I've never asked you to drop everything for me. Quite the opposite. I've spent my entire adult life ensuring you could pursue your dreams without worrying about me. He had the grace to look ashamed. You're right. We should have handled it differently. We? I raised an eyebrow. Was it Amanda's decision to send me away? Jason shifted uncomfortably. She was concerned about her social calendar being disrupted, but it was my call in the end. At least you're taking responsibility for that much, I acknowledged. Though it doesn't explain why you never told your wife that your mother owns the building housing your business. His expression turned guarded. Amanda has strong opinions about family money and business. She believes in maintaining clear boundaries. Ah, I nodded, pieces falling into place. So she's fine accepting my help as long as she doesn't have to acknowledge it. That explains a lot about your relationship with my checkbook over the years. That's not fair to her, Jason protested. Amanda comes from a family where everything has strings attached. Her father holds his money over her brothers' heads constantly, threatening to cut them off if they don't live as he dictates. And that justifies lying to her about where your startup capital and free office space came from? I asked. I never lied, he insisted. I just didn't volunteer the full picture. A lie of omission is still a lie, Jason. He leaned forward, suddenly earnest. Mom, you don't understand what this Taylor account means for us. If we nail this campaign, Apex won't need subsidized rent anymore. We'll be able to pay market rates, maybe even buy the building from you eventually. Always about the business, I murmured, more to myself than to him. Because the business is our future, he said. Mine, Amanda's, and our children's someday. The mention of potential grandchildren I might never know struck a painful chord. And where do I fit into this grand future of yours? Or do I not figure into your plans at all? Jason had the decency to look uncomfortable. Of course you do. You're my mother? A title that hasn't meant much lately, I observed. His phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at it, his expression tightening. It's Vanessa. There's an issue with the Taylor mock-ups we're presenting tomorrow. Go ahead, I said, gesturing to the door. Business calls. He hesitated, caught between work and the unresolved tension between us. We're not finished talking about this. No, we're not, I agreed. But I'm tired, Jason. The pain medication is wearing off and these conversations aren't easy. He stood, clearly conflicted. I'll come back tomorrow. We'll figure this out. I'll be here, I said simply. After he left, I sat alone in the quiet hotel room, emotionally and physically drained. The confrontation had gone more or less as I'd expected. Initial shock, followed by calculation, then a half-hearted attempt at reconciliation driven more by self-interest than genuine remorse. My phone buzzed with a text from Nancy. How's it going with Jason? Need me to come down there and knock some sense into that boy? Despite everything, I smiled. Not yet, I replied, but I'll keep the option open. I dozed fitfully that night, dreams filled with fragments of past conversations with Jason. The little boy who once promised to take care of me when I got old. The teenager who rolled his eyes when I mentioned sacrifice. The college graduate who assured me all my hard work would pay off someday. The successful businessman who no longer had room for his mother in his life. Morning brought a clearer perspective and a decision. I called Walter. I need you to draft termination papers for Apex Marketing's occupancy agreement, I said when he answered. Maggie, he replied cautiously. Are you sure? That's your son's business. I'm aware, I said. I'm not evicting them immediately. I want to give proper notice that they'll need to either sign a formal lease at market rates or vacate within 90 days, as per our original agreement. This seems drastic, Walter observed. Did something happen with Jason? Reality happened, I replied. It's time for some long overdue truth and accountability. While Walter prepared the documents, I arranged for a home health aide to assist me upon my return to Burlington. The cost would strain my budget, but I could manage for the weeks of recovery ahead. More importantly, it meant I wouldn't need to rely on Jason's conditional charity. Around noon, there was a knock at my hotel room door. I assumed it was Jason returning as promised, but when I called "Come in," it was Amanda who entered, looking uncomfortable and out of place. Margaret, she said, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. May I sit down? I gestured to the chair Jason had occupied the night before. What brings you here, Amanda? I thought you had a charity luncheon today. Her perfectly made-up face tightened. Jason told me about the building, that you own it. Ah, I nodded. The secret's out. Why didn't you ever tell me? She demanded, an accusatory edge to her voice. It wasn't my place, I replied simply. Jason asked me to keep the arrangement private, and I respected his wishes. She fidgeted with her wedding ring, a substantial diamond that caught the light. He says you're threatening to evict Apex if we don't start paying market rate rent. I'm not threatening anything, I corrected her. I'm simply ending a subsidy that was always meant to be temporary. 5 years is more than generous for a business. Startup. But the timing is terrible, she protested. We're in the middle of the Taylor campaign. If we have to start paying full rent now, it could jeopardize everything we've built. I studied her carefully, noting the genuine distress beneath her polished exterior. The timing is inconvenient, I acknowledged. Just like my surgery was inconvenient for your social calendar. Amanda had the grace to flush slightly. I shouldn't have been so dismissive of your needs. Jason and I were stressed, and I was an easy sacrifice, I finished for her. The irony is that if you'd shown even minimal compassion, we might not be having this conversation now. She leaned forward, switching tactics. Margaret, please, think about what this means for Jason's future, for your potential grandchildren's future. Interesting that you mention grandchildren now, I observed. Yesterday, I was too much of a burden to stay in your guest room. Today, you're dangling future generations as leverage. Amanda's composure slipped. What do you want from us? An apology? Fine, I'm sorry we couldn't accommodate your recovery. But is that worth destroying your son's business over? I don't want to destroy anything, Amanda, I replied calmly. I'm simply ending an arrangement that was always meant to be temporary. Jason's business isn't entitled to perpetual free rent any more than I was entitled to stay in your guest room. Amanda's perfectly manicured nails drummed against her handbag. There must be some compromise we can reach, some middle ground. I'm listening, I said, keeping my expression neutral despite the throbbing pain in my knees. It was nearly time for another dose of medication, but I wasn't about to show weakness in front of her. She straightened her shoulders, slipping into what I imagined was her boardroom posture. What if we started paying rent, but phased it in? Gradually, 25% of market rate for the first 3 months, 50% for the next 3, and so on until we're at full rate by the end of the year. The proposal was actually reasonable, better than I had expected from her. That's worth considering, I acknowledged. What else? Amanda blinked, clearly surprised I hadn't immediately accepted. What else do you want? This isn't just about the building, Amanda. It's about how I've been treated by my son and his wife. She sighed, dropping the business facade. Look, I know we handled things badly. We should have made accommodations for your recovery. But you have to understand, this Taylor account has consumed our lives for months. It's all we talk about, all we think about. And that justifies treating family like disposable inconveniences? I asked. No, she admitted reluctantly. But people make mistakes when they're under pressure. Surely you can understand that. I studied her carefully. Despite her polished exterior, there were signs of strain, shadows under her expertly applied makeup, tension in her shoulders, a slight tremor in her hands. Why is this account so important, Amanda, beyond the obvious financial benefits? Something flashed in her eyes, vulnerability, perhaps, or fear. Apex has grown too quickly. We took on overhead, hired staff, moved into larger space, all based on projected future earnings. The Taylor contract would secure our financial stability for years. Without it, she trailed off, leaving the consequences unspoken. You're overextended, I realized. In debt. She looked away. Jason didn't want you to know. He was afraid you'd see it as failure. The truth landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples of understanding through our conversation. Jason's desperation to secure the Taylor account. His unwillingness to accommodate my recovery, even his secrecy about the building ownership, all stemmed from financial insecurity he was too proud to admit. "How bad is it?" I asked. Amanda hesitated, then seemed to decide honesty was her best strategy. "We've been using personal credit cards to make payroll for the past 2 months. The Taylor contract includes a significant advance payment that would clear our immediate debts, but we won't receive it until after the successful campaign launch, which is scheduled for next week." The timing suddenly made sense. My surgery had coincided with the most financially precarious moment in Jason's business history. It didn't excuse his behavior, but it provided context I hadn't previously understood. And if something were to disrupt the campaign launch? If you were to lose your office space, for instance? Her face paled. "We'd lose the Taylor contract. Apex would almost certainly go bankrupt. We'd lose everything. The house, our savings, possibly even face personal liability for the business debts." I let that sink in for a moment, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. Part of me thought Jason deserved to face consequences for his actions and choices. Another part, the mother who had sacrificed everything for his success, couldn't bear the thought of watching him fail. "I see," I said finally. "And what role do you envision for me in this scenario? Financial savior? Silent partner? Forgotten relative until the next crisis?" Amanda flinched at my directness. "That's not fair." "Life rarely is," I replied. "I've spent decades prioritizing Jason's needs above my own. Now, when I needed him, he prioritized business above me. Actions have consequences, Amanda." She leaned forward, desperation evident in her posture. "Tell us what you want, then." "What would make this right?" The question caught me off guard. What did I want? Revenge? Reconciliation? Recognition? The answer wasn't as simple as I'd thought. "I want acknowledgement," I said slowly, finding the words as I spoke them. "Not just of what I've done for Jason throughout his life, but of who I am as a person beyond being his mother. I want respect, not just when you need something from me, but consistently, as a foundation of our relationship." Amanda nodded cautiously. "And practically speaking, what would that look like?" I considered the question carefully. "For starters, transparency. No more secrets about finances or ownership. If Jason had simply been honest about Apex's struggles, we might have found a solution that didn't involve abandoning me after surgery." "That's fair," she agreed. "What else?" "A renegotiated lease agreement for the building. Your graduated payment plan makes sense, but I want it formalized through proper legal channels. Business is business, even among family." Amanda nodded again, more confidently this time. "We can do that? Is there more?" I paused, weighing my next words carefully. "Yes. I want a place in your lives that isn't contingent on what I can provide financially. I'm not just a checkbook or a safety net. I'm family. That means showing up for each other, especially in difficult times." Something shifted in Amanda's expression, a softening around her eyes, perhaps recognition of a truth she'd been avoiding. "I've never had that kind of family," she admitted quietly. "My parents use money as a control mechanism. Love has always come with conditions in my experience." For the first time, I glimpsed the wounded person beneath Amanda's polished exterior. The girl who had learned that affection was transactional, that family ties were business arrangements in disguise. In that moment, I understood how she and Jason had found each other, both shaped by beliefs about money and love that had led them to this crisis point. "It doesn't have to be that way," I told her. "But breaking that pattern requires conscious choice and consistent effort." She met my gaze directly. "I can't promise we'll get it right immediately. Old habits die hard." "I don't expect perfection," I replied. "I expect good faith effort and genuine remorse when mistakes happen." Amanda took a deep breath, as if preparing to dive into unknown waters. If we commit to making these changes, transparency, formal business arrangements, and genuine family connection, would you consider continuing to help with the building until we're back on solid financial ground? I weighed her words against my instincts. Amanda was a shrewd negotiator. I could easily be manipulated by promises that would evaporate once the crisis passed. And yet, there seemed to be authentic vulnerability in her appeal. "I'll need to speak with Jason directly," I said finally. "These agreements require both of you to commit, not just the convenient spokesperson of the moment." She nodded, accepting the implicit criticism. "He's presenting to the Taylor executives this afternoon. It's the final pitch before they decide on the contract. He'll come here directly afterward. Then we'll continue this conversation this evening," I concluded. "In the meantime, I suggest you both consider exactly what kind of relationship you want with me going forward. Beyond the building, beyond the business arrangements." Amanda rose to leave, then hesitated. "For what it's worth, I am sorry about how we handled your surgery. It was callous and short-sighted." "Yes, it was," I agreed, not softening the truth to spare her feelings. "And that recognition is the first step toward something better." After she left, I called Nancy to update her on the developments. Her response was predictably protective. "They're manipulating you, Maggie," she warned. "Now that they need something, they're suddenly full of apologies and promises." "I'm aware of the possibility," I assured her. "But I'm not making any decisions based on promises alone. I want to see concrete actions." "Like what?" Nancy pressed. I considered the question. "Like Jason admitting his financial struggles instead of pretending everything's perfect. Like both of them acknowledging the building arrangement publicly rather than hiding it. Like actual behavior change, not just crisis management." Nancy sighed. "Just be careful. You've given so much to that." "Boy, already?" "I know," I replied quietly. "But this isn't just about giving anymore. It's about establishing a relationship based on mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice." After hanging up, I received an email from Walter with the formal notice documents attached, ready for my signature. The papers would officially inform Apex Marketing that their rent-free period would end in 90 days, requiring them to either vacate or begin paying market-rate rent. My finger hovered over the sign button on the digital document. One click, and I would formally terminate the arrangement that had supported Jason's business for 5 years. One click, and I would assert my authority as property owner rather than accommodating mother. But I didn't click. Not yet. Tonight's conversation with Jason would determine whether this document became a necessary boundary or a nuclear option. Either way, our relationship would never be the same again. The afternoon stretched on with excruciating slowness. I alternated between physical therapy exercises, which left me sweating and in pain, and browsing through Walter's detailed reports on the Boston property. According to his analysis, the building's value had appreciated so substantially that selling it could potentially fund my retirement completely. No more worrying about stretching my pension or unexpected medical costs. It was a tantalizing thought. Financial independence, freedom from relying on anyone else's consideration or goodwill. If I sold the building to an outside investor, I could wash my hands of the complicated entanglement with Jason and move forward with my life on my own terms. But at what cost? If Apex couldn't afford market-rate rent immediately, a new owner would likely evict them, triggering the financial collapse Amanda had described. Was I prepared to be the catalyst for my son's business failure, even if his behavior had hurt me deeply? Around 6 p.m., there was another knock at my hotel room door. This time, it was Jason who entered, looking simultaneously exhausted and elated. "Got it," he announced without preamble. "The Taylor contract. They loved the presentation. Signed the preliminary agreement on the spot." "Congratulations," I said, genuinely pleased for him despite our unresolved issues. That's the result you were hoping for. He nodded, loosening his tie and collapsing into the chair across from me. It's a 5-year exclusive marketing contract, worth over $10 million in billings. Apex is officially in the big leagues now. I'm happy for you, I said simply. Jason studied my face, his expression sobering. Amanda told me she came to see you, that she explained our financial situation. She did, I confirmed. It was illuminating. He looked away, embarrassment visible in his posture. I never wanted you to know how bad things had gotten. I was trying to project success, not worry you with our struggles. That wasn't your decision to make, I pointed out. I'm not some fragile bystander in your life, Jason. I'm your mother. Yes, but I'm also an adult capable of understanding business challenges without falling apart. I know, he admitted. It was pride, mostly. I wanted you to see me as successful, not struggling to keep my company afloat. Success isn't just measured in contracts and profit margins, I reminded him. Character matters too. Jason nodded. Slowly. I haven't shown much character lately, have I? No, I agreed, not cushioning the truth. You haven't. A silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken recriminations and regrets. Finally, Jason leaned forward, hands clasped together. I'm not going to make excuses for how we treated you after your surgery. It was wrong, period. And it wasn't just about the Taylor presentation, although that was part of it. I waited, allowing him space to continue. The truth is, he said, voice dropping lower, I've been terrified of failure for months, lying awake at night wondering how I'd make payroll, whether I'd have to lay off staff, what would happen to all the families depending on Apex's success. That's a heavy burden, I acknowledged. One you could have shared. I should have, he agreed. But somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that acknowledging problems was the same as admitting defeat. So I doubled down on projecting success and confidence, even when things were falling apart behind the scenes. His honesty was refreshing. The first completely unguarded conversation we'd had in years. Amanda mentioned you've been using personal credit to cover business expenses, I prompted. Jason grimaced, maxed out every card, took a second mortgage on the house, liquidated our savings, all on the gamble that we'd land the Taylor account. And if you hadn't? Bankruptcy, he said bluntly. Personal and professional. We'd have lost everything. I absorbed this information, understanding now the desperation that had driven his recent behavior. And where did I fit into this high-stakes gamble of yours? His expression fell. That's the part I'm most ashamed of. When you called about your surgery, all I could think was, not now. I can't handle one more thing right now. It was selfish. And short-sighted. And cruel, I added quietly. Yes, he acknowledged, meeting my gaze directly. Cruel. There's no justification for how we treated you. Another silence fell between us as I considered his words. There was genuine remorse in his expression, but how much was driven by the knowledge that I owned his business location? Would this contrition have materialized if that factor weren't in play? Amanda proposed a graduated payment plan for the building, I said, changing direction slightly. 25% of market rate for the first quarter, increasing over the course of a year until you're paying the full amount. Jason nodded. She mentioned that. It's a fair proposal. More than fair, actually. She also suggested there should be more transparency between us going forward. No more secrets about finances or business arrangements. I agree, he said quickly, perhaps too quickly. Complete transparency. I regarded him skeptically. Let's test that, shall we? Tell me about your current financial situation now that you've secured the Taylor contract. Jason shifted uncomfortably. We're still in a precarious position. The contract has a 30-day cooling-off period before the first payment is released. We need to make it through the next month, and even then, we'll be playing catch-up with our creditors for at least 6 months. And the building rent? even at 25% of market rate. Can you manage that right now? He hesitated, then admitted, it would be difficult for the first 2 months. After that, once the Taylor payments start flowing, we should be fine. I nodded, appreciating his candidness. One more question. If I hadn't been the building owner, if some anonymous investor held the deed, what would your strategy have been when the rent-free period ended? Jason winced. Honestly, we would have tried to renegotiate, citing our status as the anchor tenant. If that failed, we'd have looked for cheaper space and attempted to break the lease. Even though that would violate our agreement? Business. Survival sometimes requires difficult choices, he said quietly. I'm not proud of it, but yes, we would have prioritized Apex's survival over honoring the original terms. His admission was both troubling and strangely reassuring. At least he was being honest now, even when the truth painted him in an unflattering light. So where does that leave us? I asked. Not just regarding the building, but our relationship. Jason leaned back, exhaling slowly. I've been thinking about that since yesterday. About all the ways I've taken you for granted over the years. The support you've given, financial and otherwise, that I've never properly acknowledged or appreciated. And I want to do better, he said simply. I want to be the son you deserve, not just when it's convenient or when I need something, but consistently. I want to rebuild trust between us. Trust is earned through actions, not promises, I reminded him. I know, he agreed, which is why I'd like to propose something concrete. This piqued my interest. I'm listening. First, regarding the building. We'll accept Amanda's proposed payment plan, formalized through proper legal documents. Additionally, once Apex is stable again, we'll pay back the equivalent of the free rent we've received for the past 3 years, essentially retroactive rent for the period beyond our original agreement. It was a generous offer, one that acknowledged the value of what I'd provided, rather than treating it as an entitlement. Second, he continued, I want to be transparent about Apex's finances going forward. Monthly P&L statements, cash flow, projections, the works. No more hiding our struggles or successes. And personally, I prompted, what about our relationship beyond the business arrangements? Here, Jason seemed less certain. I know I need to make changes, but I'm not sure what that looks like in practical terms. I want to be more present, more supportive, but you're not sure how, I finished for him. He nodded, looking somewhat lost. A rare expression for my usually confident son. I've been so focused on business success for so long, I'm not sure I remember how to simply be a son anymore. His honesty touched something in me. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I saw not just the calculating businessman or the ungrateful child, but my son. Flawed, struggling, human. Perhaps we start with the basics, I suggested. Regular calls that aren't crisis-driven. Visits that aren't rushed or obligatory. Making space in your life for family connections, even when work is demanding. I'd like that, Jason said softly. And there's something else Amanda and I discussed after she left here this morning. Something we should have offered from the beginning. I raised an eyebrow questioningly. We'd like you to stay with us during your recovery, properly this time. The guest room is ready, and we've arranged for a part-time nurse to help with your physical therapy needs while we're at work. The offer was exactly what I had wanted originally, what should have been automatically extended by any loving family. The fact that it came now, after all that had transpired, carried a bittersweet quality. And if I decline? I asked, testing his response. Then we'll respect your decision and find other ways to support your recovery, he replied without hesitation. This isn't contingent on anything else. It's simply what we should have done from the start. His answer surprised me. I had half expected manipulation or pressure thinly disguised as concern. Instead, his response suggested genuine reflection and change. "I'll consider it," I said, neither accepting nor rejecting the offer. "But first, there's something important we need to address." Jason straightened, his expression attentive. "What's that, Amanda?" I said simply. "Any agreement between us needs to include her full participation and consent. I won't be the hidden power player in your marriage, Jason. If we're moving toward transparency and authentic relationship, it has to include all parties." Jason nodded thoughtfully at my mention of Amanda. "You're right. This involves all of us." He pulled out his phone and sent a quick text. "I've asked her to join us. She's been waiting downstairs in the hotel lobby." Within minutes, Amanda arrived, looking less polished than during her earlier visit. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her designer clothes had been replaced by jeans and a sweater, a marked departure from her usual carefully curated appearance. "The Taylor team loved the campaign," she announced as she entered, giving Jason a quick, genuine smile that revealed a warmth I rarely saw between them. Then, turning to me with more hesitation, "Margaret, how are you feeling? Do you need anything for pain?" The simple question, focused on my comfort rather than their agenda, felt significant. "I'm managing," I replied. "Thank you for asking." Amanda took a seat beside Jason, and for a moment, we sat in silence. Three adults at a crossroads, each aware that what happened next would reshape our relationship permanently. "I've been explaining to Mom the details of our financial situation and what the Taylor contract means for Apex," Jason began, "and I've proposed some concrete steps forward regarding the building and our relationship." Amanda nodded. "Did you tell her about the retroactive rent idea?" "I did," Jason confirmed. "Mom seems open to discussing it, but she rightly points out that any arrangement needs to include your full participation and agreement." "Of course," Amanda said immediately. "I'm completely on board with transparency moving forward. No more secrets or selective disclosures. Even if that means acknowledging that your family wealth isn't the only factor in Apex's success," I asked pointedly. "That your mother-in-law's support has been instrumental from the beginning?" Amanda flushed slightly. "Yes, I've been unfair in that regard. My family's money came with so many strings attached that I developed a complicated relationship with financial assistance. I wanted to believe we were succeeding entirely on our own merits." "Pride is a powerful motivator," I acknowledged, recognizing the same trait in myself. "But it can also blind us to reality." "The reality," Jason interjected, "is that we wouldn't be where we are without your support, Mom. The building, the startup capital, all of it. We should have acknowledged that openly instead of hiding it like some shameful secret. And I should have been more gracious about accepting help," Amanda added, "especially from family who genuinely wanted us to succeed, without manipulation or control." Their acknowledgments felt genuine, but words came easily in moments of crisis. Actions would prove whether this newfound awareness represented real change or just temporary contrition. "Let's discuss the specifics," I suggested, steering us toward practical matters. "Jason mentioned you've secured the Taylor contract, but won't receive payment for 30 days, leaving you in a precarious position in the interim." Amanda nodded. "We've got enough to make payroll for the next 2 weeks. After that, we'll be stretched extremely thin until the first Taylor payment arrives." "And the graduated rent plan you proposed? We could handle starting at 25% in 60 days, Amanda calculated. Anything sooner would put us in a dangerous cash flow position." I considered this. "What if we extended the rent-free period for 60 more days, then implemented the graduated plan? That would give you breathing room until the Taylor payments stabilize your finances." Their expressions brightened simultaneously. "That would be incredibly helpful," Jason admitted. Are you sure? I'm not doing this for Apex, I clarified. I'm doing it because I believe in second chances, in the possibility that people can recognize their mistakes and grow from them. Amanda reached over and took Jason's hand. We won't squander this opportunity, Margaret. Not the financial reprieve, and not the chance to rebuild our relationship. Speaking of which, Jason added, our offer stands about staying with us during your recovery. No strings attached, no business implications. Simply family taking care of family. I studied them both, searching for signs of insincerity or calculation. What I saw instead were two people attempting, however imperfectly, to make amends. Before I decide, I said, there's something I need to share with both of you. They exchanged a quick glance, then focused on me with identical expressions of concern. Walter has been advising me about the Boston property, I explained. According to his analysis, if I sold the building now, I could fund my retirement completely. No more financial worries, no more stretching my pension to cover unexpected expenses like medical bills. Jason's face fell, though he tried to hide it. You're considering selling to someone else? It would be the financially prudent choice, I pointed out, especially after recent events demonstrated how vulnerable I am when health issues arise. We understand, Amanda said softly, though her expression suggested otherwise. You need to protect yourself. The question is, I continued, what matters more at this point in my life? Financial security or family connection? Because recent experience suggests I can't necessarily count on both. The bluntness of my statement hung in the air. Jason looked down, guilt evident in his posture. What if you could have both? Amanda suggested after a moment. What if there was a way to secure your financial future while also strengthening family bonds? I'm listening, I replied, curious about her thinking. What if, she proposed, once Apex is stable again, we purchase the building from you at full market value? You'd get the financial security of selling, but the building would stay in the family. We could structure the purchase with favorable terms that work for everyone. It was an intriguing suggestion, one that acknowledged both my practical needs and the emotional components of our relationship. We'd need to develop a formal business plan for the purchase, Jason added, clearly warming to the idea. Something that respects your financial interests while accommodating our cash flow realities. With proper legal documentation, I specified, and realistic timelines. Absolutely, they agreed in unison. For the first time since arriving in Boston, I felt a glimmer of optimism about the future. Not just the practical arrangements regarding the building, but the possibility of genuine reconciliation with my son and daughter-in-law. I'll stay with you during my recovery, I decided, not because I need to protect my investment in your building, but because I want to give our relationship the same chance at healing that my knees are getting. Relief washed over Jason's face. Thank you, Mom. We won't let you down this time. Actions, not promises, I reminded him gently. That's what I'll be watching for. Starting now, Amanda declared, standing up. I'm going to speak with the hotel manager about checking you out. Jason can help gather your things, and we'll have you settled in our guest room, properly this time, within the hour. After they left to make arrangements, I called Nancy to update her on the developments. Her skepticism was palpable through the phone. You're giving them another chance after. How they treated you? She asked incredulously. Maggie, are you sure about this? Not entirely, I admitted. But relationships worth having require risk. And despite everything, I'm not ready to give up on being part of my son's life. Just promise me you'll protect yourself, Nancy urged. Legally and emotionally. I am, I assured her. Walter is drawing up formal agreements for the building arrangement, and I'm keeping my expectations realistic about the relationship. Small steps, consistent effort. That's what I'm looking for. That evening, as I settled into Jason and Amanda's guest room, now properly prepared with hospital-grade pillows to elevate my legs, a small refrigerator stocked with water and snacks, and a call button within easy reach. I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us to this point. My surgery had unexpectedly revealed the true nature of my relationship with my son, both its flaws and its potential. The building I had purchased years ago as an investment in Jason's future had become the catalyst for painful truths and, possibly, meaningful change. As I drifted toward sleep, I remembered something my own mother used to say. Sometimes the most valuable gifts are the ones that hurt to receive. The past few days had certainly been painful, but perhaps they had also been necessary, forcing us to confront patterns and expectations that had silently damaged our relationship for years. Tomorrow would bring physical therapy, uncomfortable conversations, and the hard work of rebuilding trust. But for tonight, I allowed myself to hope that the foundation we were laying, both in business and in family, might prove stronger than what had come before. 6 months passed more quickly than I expected. My knees healed steadily, first with painful therapy sessions where Jason would sometimes join me for moral support, then with increasingly confident steps as I graduated from walker to cane to walking unassisted by the 4th month. During those months of recovery, I remained in Jason and Amanda's guest room, which gradually transformed from a temporary medical space to something that felt more personal. Amanda had surprised me by bringing in some of my favorite books from my Burlington apartment, along with framed photos of my sister and parents that had previously sat on my mantel. Small touches that said, "This space is yours." The promised nurse came 3 times weekly for the first month, then tapered to once a week as I improved. What surprised me most, however, were the evenings when either Jason or Amanda would return early from work specifically to check on me, not out of obligation, but with genuine interest in my comfort and progress. "We received the first quarterly report from Walter today," Jason mentioned one evening in May as we sat on their back patio. The spring air was warm, scented with blooming lilacs from their garden. "The graduated payment plan is working well for our cash flow." I nodded, appreciating his transparency about business matters. True to their word, they had formalized our building arrangement with proper legal documentation drawn up by independent attorneys. Apex had begun paying rent, starting at 25% of market rate and increasing quarterly as we'd agreed. "Walter mentioned you're looking at permanent options for when you return to Burlington," Jason continued, his tone carefully neutral. "Have you decided when that will be?" The question had been hovering unspoken between us for weeks. My recovery had progressed well enough that I could manage independently, yet neither of us had broached the subject of my departure. "I've been thinking about that," I admitted. "My apartment in Burlington is small, difficult to navigate even with healthy knees. I'm considering something more accessible." "What about staying in Boston?" Amanda suggested, joining us on the patio with a tray of iced tea. "There are some lovely senior communities here with independent living options." "Boston is expensive," I pointed out, though the idea of remaining closer to them held appeal. "Actually," Jason began, setting down his glass, "Amanda and I have been discussing something we'd like to propose." I raised an eyebrow, curious. Over the past months, I'd learned to distinguish between Jason's business propositions and his more personal communications. This felt like the former, though with a personal undertone. "We've been exploring the possibility of converting the 3rd floor of the Apex building into a residential apartment," he explained. "The current tenant's lease expires next month, and the space has the right layout for a comfortable living arrangement. With your own private entrance and elevator access," Amanda added. "Complete independence but proximity to family." I considered their suggestion carefully. "And what would this arrangement involve financially?" "That's where it gets interesting," Jason said, leaning forward slightly. "Remember how we talked about Apex eventually purchasing the building from you? We've developed a formal proposal." He handed me a folder containing a detailed business plan. Apex would purchase the building over a 10-year period through monthly payments structured like a traditional mortgage. The price would be set at current market value, providing me with steady income while allowing Apex manageable payments. Most surprising was the provision that I would retain ownership of the third-floor apartment for my lifetime. This way, you'd have both financial security and a permanent home, Amanda explained. No more worrying about rent increases or accessibility issues. The thoroughness of their proposal impressed me. It wasn't a hastily conceived idea born of momentary guilt, but a carefully considered plan that acknowledged both my needs and their business realities. "I'll need Walter to review this," I said, unwilling to make snap decisions where both family and finances intersected. "Of course," Jason agreed immediately. "We expected that. Take all the time you need." That night, alone in the guest room, I reflected on how dramatically our relationship had evolved since my surgery. The crisis that had initially revealed the worst in my son had somehow catalyzed meaningful change. Jason and Amanda had demonstrated consistency in their efforts. Not perfect, certainly, but genuine and sustained. The small daily kindnesses had accumulated. Jason accompanying me to medical appointments despite his busy schedule. Amanda learning to prepare my favorite meals. Both of them including me in decisions and conversations rather than treating me as an afterthought. These actions, more than any grand gestures, had begun rebuilding my trust in them. After Walter thoroughly vetted their proposal, suggesting some modifications that strengthened my position while maintaining fairness to all parties, I agreed to their plan. By summer's end, construction had begun on converting the third floor into a spacious apartment designed with accessibility in mind. 1 year after my surgery, I stood in my new home, surrounded by both familiar furnishings from Burlington and thoughtfully chosen new pieces that Jason and Amanda had selected. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of Boston's skyline, while the building's location provided convenient access to shops, medical facilities, and cultural attractions. "What do you think?" Jason asked, watching as I explored the space. "Is anything missing?" "It's perfect," I assured him, genuinely impressed by the attention to detail they'd shown. Every aspect reflected careful consideration of my needs and preferences. "There's one more thing," Amanda said, guiding me to what appeared to be a standard closet door near the entrance. When she opened it, I discovered not storage space but a small elevator. "It connects directly to Apex's reception area," she explained. "So you can visit whenever you want without going outside, and we can come up easily as well." The thoughtfulness of this feature, facilitating connection while respecting boundaries, epitomized the new balance we'd found in our relationship. That evening, Jason and Amanda hosted a small housewarming gathering. Nancy had driven down from Dewey, Burlington, along with a few other friends I'd made during my time in Boston. As we shared a meal at my new dining table, I couldn't help reflecting on the unexpected journey that had brought us here. "A toast," Jason proposed, raising his glass. "To new beginnings and second chances. And to painful lessons that lead to growth," I added quietly. Later, after the guests had departed, Jason lingered behind as Amanda took the last dishes to my dishwasher. "I never properly thanked you," he said, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Not just for the building or financial support over the years, but for giving us another chance when you had every reason not to. Family is complicated," I acknowledged. "It requires forgiveness and adjustment from all sides." "I'm not the son I should have been," he admitted. "But I'm trying to be better, not just because you own the building," he added with a small smile, acknowledging our private joke, "but because I finally understand what matters." As I watched him help Amanda with the last of the cleanup, working together with the easy rhythm they'd developed over recent months, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for years. The crisis that had initially seemed like the breaking point of our relationship had instead become its salvation. My knees still ached sometimes, especially before rain. The business relationship with Apex still required careful navigation. And our family dynamic remained a work in progress, with occasional missteps and misunderstandings. But beneath these imperfections lay a foundation stronger than what had come before, built on honesty, mutual respect, and the shared understanding that some investments yield returns more valuable than money. As I stood at my window that night, watching Boston's lights shimmer against the darkness, I remembered my earlier question about what mattered most at this stage of life: financial security or family connection. Perhaps the greatest lesson of the past year was learning that with courage, communication, and commitment, it was possible to have both, not as competing priorities, but as interconnected elements of a well-lived life. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.